Back to the phone lines. We'll talk next to Ian, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Hi, Ian.
Hey, Hank. Nice talking to you.
Likewise.
Hope you're doing well today. I got a question about tribulation. I know you hear this a lot, but I just want to clarify. In your opinion, in Scripture, has it already happened yet, or is it types and shadows that you refer to?
Well, no. I mean, there have been tribulations in the past. What I've said before on the show, and I have written about this as well, is that a future 7-year tribulation is conspicuous by its absence in the whole of Scripture. But that is not to suggest that the Jews have not faced that kind of tribulation in the past. And, of course, it's hard not to remember the terrible 7-year tribulation suffered by the Jews, for example, during the beastly reign of the Old Testament Antichrist Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Not only that, but if you look at the Jewish wars where Jesus looked to that very atrocity, going back to the prophet Daniel, which Jesus references in the Olivet Discourse, he uses that to look forward to another tribulation that the Jews would suffer with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. But the notion of doubling the time frame that Jesus predicted that would happen with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and then driving it into the future, it's, like I said, completely conspicuous by its absence in the whole of Scripture.
All right. And can you give me your interpretation on the millennium?
Well, the same thing. I mean, do you ever hear Jesus Christ talking about a 7-year tribulation in the future? No. The same thing is true. Do you ever hear Jesus or the disciples talking about a 1,000-year semi-golden age that is replete with temple and sacrifice? No. The plain and literal sense of the Lord's words in Scripture suggests that in the future, both the righteous and the unrighteous will be resurrected and judged together. The notion that believers will be raptured during a secret coming prior to the resurrection of unbelievers is an imposition on the text, and I think it's an imposition on the text then as well to suggest that there's going to be a separation that takes place after that of 1,000 years before we have the eternal state. If you look for the 1,000 years, the only place that you find it is in Revelation chapter 20, which is a highly symbolic passage. And therefore, to take the words in that passage and to render them in a wooden literalistic fashion when they are uniformly used metaphorically throughout the rest of Scripture, I think wreaks havoc on the biblical text.
Okay. And in chapter 22, where you referred me last time I spoke with you, in chapter 22 I was reading it, and Jesus was talking to John through an angel, wasn't it, where he says, you know, I'm coming soon, and yet but you also say that, you know, that Jesus is not linguistically challenged.
Linguistically challenged, yeah.
Yeah, where he says that, you know, the time is near. Well, when he means near, he means near. What about in 22 Revelation where he says, I'm coming soon?
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. I mean, what Jesus Christ is saying is that he is coming in judgment. I mean, that's the whole sense of what you get out of the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is John's expanded Olivet Discourse. Remember that Jesus in the Olivet Discourse said, I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass away until all these things have been fulfilled. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus Christ is talking about the end of temple sacrifice, the end of type and shadow, because the reality supplants the shadow. And this is precisely what John is doing in the book of Revelation as well. So Christ coming on clouds, and by the way, that's an obvious judgment metaphor. If one is familiar with the Old Testament at all, they are very familiar with the coming on clouds judgment metaphor. Jesus is employing that with respect to the destruction of Jerusalem. But the fact that he's coming on clouds also, having been fulfilled, assures us that Jesus is going to, as Hebrews puts it, appear a second time. And so we look forward in the future to his appearing. When that happens, the habitation of God and the habitation of humanity will be as one. And that's precisely what John looks forward to in Revelation chapter 21 when he sees the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride beautifully adorned for her husband. So all of the books of the Bible not only look forward to fulfillment of prophecy in the near future, but also look forward to the eternal age, the new heaven and the new earth in which dwells righteousness. So the events of the near future are events that demonstrate that the Bible is rooted, grounded in truth. It is rooted and grounded on the testimony of the prophets in the Old Testament and the apostles in the New Testament, with Jesus Christ the cornerstone. And the fact that the Bible is reliable gives us certainty that Jesus will appear a second time in the future. And when he does, he will resolve the problem of sin and Satan, and we will forever live in an eternal state. But the notion that people that have died are going to come back to earth and live in resurrected, glorified bodies with unredeemed, unresurrected people, and that for 1,000 years, with Jesus presiding over temple and priest and sacrifice, is decidedly unbiblical. In fact, drawn to its logical conclusion, it would mean that Christ's atonement on the cross was insufficient because temple sacrifices, according to the modern prophetic ideas, well, they account for sin. So if that's true, then Christ's sacrifice on the cross was insufficient. The whole thing has all kinds of unwieldy little angles and dangles that are, well, out of touch with what we want to believe in terms of the central message of the Scriptures, and that is Jesus Christ is going to come again. And when he does, he's going to put all things to right. It's not going to be a semi-golden age with the greatest apostasy happening at the end of the millennium. No, it is the time when the eternal state ensues. So my dad, who died in 1997 as a believer, isn't going to come back in a glorified body to a cursed creation. He's coming back to a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwells righteousness. By the way, I actually touch on this in my book, Afterlife, what you need to know about heaven, the hereafter, and near-death experiences. That book available through the Ministry of the Christian Research Institute. As always, for your support of the ministry, we'll send you a copy. You can check it out on the web at equip.org. Write me at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271, or you can talk to one of our resource consultants. That number, 888-7000, and the letters CRI. Be right back with